Got 3 poems. The first 2 are from a new collection entitled An American Pilgrimage, and the last one is from a collection entitled Rain. It's called Ruins. The first one is An American Pilgrimage. Gino picked up a stone the size of a softball and threw it like a shot put through the big stained glass made in Germany in 1857 windows, and darkness from the eyes of the cathedral poured onto our faces, young in the just before early mass morning light of Helios, sanctifying the unforgiven rouge, mainlining Detroit with enough flowers for 1,000 cemeteries, enough flowers to beautify the dead, and shards of shattered sacred hallucinations reinterpreted, beautified, and born anew with Gino's copulatory act of egregious recreated fiat hit the wooden floors, sounding like ice under warm scotch, marrying the echo of stone, crashing down on the mourner's bench, to the gasps of the fistful of the faithful on retreat inside the cosmic wound of the meta-narrative machinery of church and state, where the beautiful, terrible iconography reminds us of who we are not and why we are abject, awakened from their silent narcotic dream, and we run off into the sun, rising naked and in flames, spilling its sweet, hot, golden seed onto the flat land and factoryscape and the big lake and the general apocalypse of the Western Empire, to find the real face of God. In midnight howlings, in fields of mushrooms behind the crime scene, cop tape concealments soiling our well-groomed cuticles, and our altar boy brown ties, wild and true and unconstructed, dancing in our faces. Away from the whole basket case scene of mothers made of recycled dreams, drunk on communion wine, praying the prayers of the superior and the successful within a bourgeois film sweat and their fantasy of real life. And Gino's gone completely insane old man, hating Gino's fist-pounded face because it reminded him of his own Ohio ugliness reproduced in the mirror of needy offspring, creeping into the kitchen cupboards during long, silent, snoring nights and stealing his food from under his breath, and the Midwestern ugliness of his second wife, a reproduction of the reproduction of his undifferentiated self, in the broken mirror of his first wife, clawing at his children's eyes and flesh, deforming them into cheaper reproductions of their unconsummated selves, and the rest of that splintered posse of small-town, countryside, shadow of Detroit, hog-slaughtering fathers and brothers, driven over the edge by the narcissistic bourgeois model, born on the silver screen and reproduced for mass consumption on a factory floor. Gino's old man, just looking for any reason to consume our livers with his brand new 9. And how many times did we run off into the August earth with barrel marks, blue and red, tattooing our abdomens, laughing ecstatic at our egregious escape, all tanned in musculature, all married up to motorcycle dreams, gripping throttles with windy faces and wild hair, humming along mountain roads at 100 miles a clip, and all the way to the ocean's white foamy breath blowing back and forth in egregious dances with sun and moon dances of freedom stolen from the secret compartment of inside my poppy's brain, where dusty attic of dreams that I snuck into when I was an infant among the dying, in the middle of a story of beautiful youth unleashed, where your finest memorial wine is kept, infused with visions of hitching rides across a lost, beautiful continent in a perfect Dionysian marriage of ecstasy and rebellion, all tanned and forsaken, running away from the whole fucking basket case scene of broken down bikes we'd never reassemble, overflowing parts onto concrete floors, ching, clang, ching, internal human gadgetry and wires and silicone implants covered with blood and bits of bone, yeah baby, running off into the sunrise, away from our own encroaching sacrifice of consciousness, gone away forever from our father's state of perpetual convalescence, soiling the purificator on the altar of dead gods and human remains, with defiled blood flowing from the veins of raggedy beach rats beat down before we grew up, running toward our last best hope, beautiful, egregious, perpetual transience, and St. Jude of the absurd, St. Jude of the insane, St. Jude of the hopeless, until our mothers saw the recycling facility of their own generation losing pace with our hyperactive footsteps, running the risk of madness, running the risk of alienation, making tracks for the big Detroit factory filter lake where we could pull the strings on our girlfriends' bikinis and swim naked with chemicals and syringes, tampons and fish going belly up in our own beautiful flesh and laughter and smokes and beers unashamed. But the marriage of the smell of the remains of sentience and fried bologna and fatty clumps of brown hamburger to cigarette smoke and the incense of greasy pans abandoned on the stove of marriage and family, gone iron gray, gone on a winter afternoon without end, lingered around our faces and our flesh and our brains, tingling with monkey paw and drying in the sun as it crash lands on another sad, sweet swan dive collision course with that big leg. We're just leftovers from our father's fits of rage and feasts of cheap beer and spam and our mother's boxed meals and television devotions and bingo hall Catholicism, swallowed whole and made forgetful by the local evening news and then they started to drop Adderall in our morning cereal, along with vitamins and platitudes and scary stories about what happens to kids who cut holes in the fence and wander away from the compound and into the big wild open field in search of gods who are more than just narcotic nightmares. But that's the only way to get in touch with St. Jude of the Absurd, St. Jude of the insane, St. Jude of the hopeless, St. Jude of the beach rats, because he don't hang out in places where the fantasy of hope still rents out the cold, dark flats in human hearts. So go ahead, baby. Keep wandering down that jaded highway, insulating yourself from the real in all of its beauty and agony, all of its piss and cum and passion, telling yourself the same bedtime story every night, that the fantasy of egregious copulations in the Museum of Art and the beautiful long shadow of Giacometti's lean giants is better than the reality. Whatever it takes to complete that protracted lobotomy trip that tucks you in at night. But I'm still at the banquet of transients and thieves and beggars and miscreants, and I'm going to stay until I'm ready to leave, and then I'll go to the bar, pay my tab, and walk the fuck out. All right, this one's called You Close Down Early, Baby, like a small town bar on a Sunday night. You close down early, baby, like a small-town bar on a Sunday night with the wink of the corner street lights still stealing the last dregs of my imagination, exhaling my shadow in a dark vapor before the night swallows it whole. You close down early, baby, like a dim-light bar where I order drinks for me and the crippled and limping old man who lives inside my heart, who would die if I didn't cover him up in whiskey. Where they play Coltrane on the house stereo, where he still blows his sax with ballads piped in from some other world, long, low, sweet, sad, filled up with all the wisdom of the universe, all the understanding that lies too deep for words. Where the ice in my glass crackles beneath warm scotch, where I let it smoke and exhale ghosts among the liquor bottles and theater seats behind the bar, where I can still hear my footsteps echoing between the sounds of passing cars on North Main on my way from another lost girl to a smoke and a drink and a fuck and a prayer. You close down early, baby, like a small town bar on a Sunday night, leaving the lonely homeless. And I guess that's me, because I'm still standing here staring at that sleeping neon bar, cocktails, music, dancing girls, and I ain't ready to go. I ain't ready to go alone into the August earth, where Helios becomes Apollo and summer's dementia is a beautiful shovel-wielding father in a dirty t-shirt with rivers of sweat rolling over veined arms as the blade strikes the soil, and the sounds of scraping steel against earth and stone are the wild vocalizations of a fresh hand-hewn 6x6 that will swallow the sacred and the profane. And this singing to myself, this staying warm over free coffee refills after the last dregs have been drunk, this singing to myself on cocktail napkins stained with mustard and dreams. This singing to myself in 3 a.m. diners in the company of caffeine and whiskey and all the proverbs and verbs of being inside my head, and a good fuck over the counter if I survive the last struggling remains of bleary-eyed human discourse consummating loss with steak and eggs and hash browns. As my familiar-faced barista kneels on her diner stool and spins her miraculous ass in a Palm Sunday dance, spilling coffee in black on white with moans and sighs and screams that follow me into my dreams, and bring the raggedy-toothed old men of the street to the window, rubbing portals in their smoky breath for a closer view of the meaning and end of life. This singing to myself in the August earth to shrug off the lowly bedroom memorial rituals, staring alone into the night, sitting on the edge of a stranger's bed, sanctified by church and court for meaningless sex. This singing to myself in winter's earth, laying alone and cold, abandoned by all the faces of Octavia's mirror. My heart aches in this setting sun, and this singing to myself